As part of Ferrari Fridays, William Ross from the Exotic Car Marketplace will be discussing all things Ferrari and interviewing people that live and breathe the Ferrari brand. Topics range from road cars to racing, drivers to owners, as well as auctions, private sales, and trends in the collector market.
All right, and welcome back to the Ferrari Marketplace. I'm William Ross. I'm your host, and I appreciate you guys checking out and listening. I know I think it's almost been 2 months since I've actually dropped a new one. So my apologies for that, but I've been a little tied up doing a few other things. I did some traveling and whatnot. So trying to squeeze these things in was a little difficult. Well, I mean, I probably could have done it, but honestly, I'm just a bit lazy. So didn't really get it all put together. But I got to get that all situated. So now I'm back at home so I can start putting some more of these out for you guys. So today's episode, what we are going to talk about is probably, I know my one I said about the 280 GTO. The 280 GTO is probably my all-time favorite Ferrari. You just, and hey, I'm a child of, I was born in 1970, but, in my teenage years, obviously in the 80s, bedroom walls, whatnot, 280 GTO is what stuns me. But then, as we know, towards the end of the 80s, the venerable F40 came out. So it's almost a tie between the 288 GTO and the F40 as being my favorite Ferrari. Now, the thing I love about the 288 GTO is, it's I want to say understated, but, basically it is the 308, 328 just kind of beefed up. Obviously, a lot better motor, everything like that to it. It's not nowhere near, derivative, what have you, what you want to say. But, the F40 basically was built up basically from scratch. Now the motor was actually taken from the 288 GTO Evolution, but everything else was built up just for that specific car. So let's kind of jump into how it became about. So obviously, as we know, the 280 GTO, Ferrari created that vehicle and built the 272 of them, but what it was built for was to go Group B rallying. Now, I don't know how many of you out there are the Group B rally fans. I'm a big one of it. I love watching those videos from back then. Those guys are absolutely nuts. I should say gals too, because there were some women also racing very, very well too. Michelle Mouton was awesome. But anyways, they built those cars for that rally series. Well, as they basically got going to it, Group B got the axe. Well, in that time when it was getting close when they built these, they built the 288 GTO Evolution. Now, the motor they built in that car had some, better turbos, whatnot. It had, it was a lot bigger motor, so to speak, that was put in that car. And they built the 5 of them for that. And so, but then when Group B got killed, they had no place to go with them. So they're like, okay, what do? We have this thing. Well, basically, it was all going to get, binned and never seen again. Well, one of the individuals at Ferrari says, well, hey, since we have this motor, why don't we do something along the lines of building a car that celebrates our 40th anniversary? So what they did is they proposed this idea, and being that this is actually the last car that Enzo Ferrari himself signed off on, his signature to it, as I guess everyone would say. That's what kind of gives it more of its aura, its nostalgia to it because of that fact. It went basically from that concept and idea to basically a road-going car in 11 months. Some say 11, some say 13 months. So just say 11 to 13 months. It basically got designed, the whole 9 yards. It got built and put together, stuff that motor in there, and do it. Now, if you know what the car is, well, obviously it's all down about design. Very aerodynamic, a lot of time in the wind tunnel, and to execute that design. And plus the fact is, it was, one of the first cars, or the first car, production car, to be able to go over 200 miles an hour. And they were saying the top speed was 201, which was never verified or never done, but that was always an argument, and no one was really going to go against Ferrari and Enzo himself saying that's what was going on, so they just kind of let it be. But anyways, the F40 getting built, that thing is one of the first cars to use carbon fiber. So, in essence, it's a carbon Kevlar mesh weave that is used on the exterior and the body panels on that car. So it's basically one of the first car to utilize that type of material, that concept for a car. Now, it still had a tube frame chassis, but all the exterior panels and all that were all done out of this carbon Kevlar material. So if you own one today and you crash it, it's very, very expensive to fix. And their main goal, obviously, for this car too was lightness. So they stuffed that 288 GTO Evolution motor in there, twin turbocharged, cranks out about roughly the average is around 470 to 475 horsepower. Now, obviously, as these things were built, the various levels of horsepower kind of fluctuated amongst the cars. There was really no set one. So that's what you get for some hand-built Italian machinery. So, but I mean, you're still in that range, say between 470 to 480. Let's just ballpark in there. But, and for that cars, they had tons of torque. That's the other nice thing about this car. It's got gobs and gobs of torque. It's got 456 foot-pound of torque. So that thing gets up and goes like right now. So it's a very, very fast car. But the other advantage it has is it only weighs about 3,000 pounds dry. So I know 470 to 480 horsepower this day and age, like, oh, that doesn't sound like much. You got Camrys getting close to 400 horsepower and all this crap. Well, you got a car that only weighs about 3,000 pounds. So, you got your horsepower to weight ratio there. So it's very, very agile in the fact that thing can get up and get moving very, very quickly. So, and everything they kept in this car to keep the weight down. They obviously, with the carbon Kevlar exterior body panels, also to the minimalistic interior. Every car built was the Rosso Costa and also had red interior. But, interior-wise, everything was gone. No carpeting. Well, take that back. There's no carpeting on the floors, but there was carpeting on the dash. Some people kind of fail to realize that or don't know that they actually carpeted the dash. Why? I don't know. I'm not sure if it had to do with sun glare maybe or something, but they did carpet the dash. I mean, it's not like a thick plush carpet or anything like that, but it is a carpeted dash. It's not the mouse hair stuff that they used back in the day along those lines in the older cars that used to have that. Nowadays, it's a nightmare to try and replace and get fixed. But it was a carpeted dash, but everything else is gone. Everything's deleted. I mean, no door handles. All your door handles to get out of that car, it's a wire cable to get in, or you yank on that to get out of the car. So, everything's out. This is just a pure driver's car. You're not going to sit there and jam the tunes and go tooling around or anything. No, it's all about that motor that's sitting right behind your head. There's your music. That's what you want to listen to. So, getting that thing built and get up and going. So, when this thing was revealed to the world, they built this thing pretty hush-hush and obviously rather quickly, within basically a year. They bought it and revealed it to the world, and it immediately, people went bonkers for this car. It was just, something, if you look at it, was something that was never seen, something like this for a road car was never really done before, especially by a manufacturer like Ferrari. Back then, the main competitor who they were going against, or everyone pitted it against, was the 959. These are two totally, completely different cars. That 959, as everyone knows, is a tour de force technologically. It's got all-wheel drive, the computers and everything like that. And even them selling those at the $400,000 or $500,000, I think they were losing $400,000 or $500,000 every car. So basically, I think it cost them like $1 to $1.2 million to build each car. But then they sold them, basically half that price. But it was a technological exercise for them. But two German engineering down to the nth degree, but then you got the Italian passion. So two totally completely cars, two completely different driving experiences. But anyways, when this car got released to the public, people just went absolutely crazy. Now the other fact is this being basically the last car that Enzo put his signature, to and stamped for approval to get produced. Speculators, everyone was going through the roof in regards to getting their hands on them and flipping them and doing everything. So all these things happened. Now, the original allotment, they were only going to build 400 units of this car, but due to demand and just, everyone just absolutely going nuts for the car, hey, let's build more. So that kind of upset some of the people that were first through the door, and it really upset a lot of speculators, but everyone far care about the speculators because, they're not very fond of people buying their cars and flipping them. They are not fond of that at all. Everyone knows, it's what it takes and what it entails for you to be able to get on the buyer's list, to get in Ferrari's favor in regards to getting access to all these new special cars, something like that. Yeah, you don't flip these cars. No, you don't give them, you don't sell build slots, you do that. Because as soon as you get that, you're done. You'll never get offered another car again. It's not like you go and get banned for 5-10 years and then come back. No, doesn't happen. They're sticklers for that. They're not hurting for people wanting to buy their cars. So it's next man up. So anyways, they end up building up to 1,315 of these cars. And obviously that was over a production run of about 4 years. So I mean, it's a nice run. So you're looking, was it about 300, a little over 300 cars a year they built. Obviously the earlier cars, especially the ones that came over here to the U.S., after 1990 they had to have catalytic converters. But the Euro spec and the U.S. spec cars are rather different in regards to just how they drive, everything, the suspension, the whole 9 yards. Because obviously the mandates are required to make the car U.S. homologated. Really kind of kills things, and that's one things I don't really like about here in the United States in regards to cars that we get. They're so gentrified, so to speak, in regards to safety and everything like that, and all this. They just, it's just obscene what to get. The cars they can get over there in Europe, are fantastic as compared to a lot of the cars the cars we're able to buy over here in the United States. I mean, point in fact, the new M3 Touring. I was telling someone the other day that I had a deposit already and at the dealer, but they just told me it wasn't coming here to the States. And I told them, look here, take $500, and if it does by chance, then hey, I want the first one. But it never did, but they still had my $500. I was like, hey, I'm waiting to see. You never know, right? So it's one of those gambles you take. But anyways, back to the F40. Now, obviously, with that many getting out there, they're going up, but prices actually kind of held steady on those cars. And as obviously demand grew, price grew on these cars, this is back in, the 90s, and spending like $1 million. I know Nigel Mansell's F40 back then in the 90s sold for like $1.5 million. Now, that's a lot of money, but obviously having, Nigel's name attached to it or back to it, had to do it. Now, myself, I'm not one to spend and pay extra for just because someone who else owned the car. I could care less. Only thing I care about is that person who owned it, took care of it, has all the records. That's my biggest concern, and that's what I want to keep an eye on. That's what motivates me in wanting to buy a car. Not that so-and-so's ass sat in him. I could care less. It does nothing for me. A lot of people out there, some people out there does. Does add value, and people pay for it. Why? I don't know. It's just, to me, I just don't get it. There might be one or two cars out there that were owned by someone that might mean something, maybe by Schumacher or by Senna, something along those lines. But the thing is, a lot of these guys that own those cars, they're like 4 or 5 owners ago. It wasn't like it just came out of their collection or anything along those lines. No, it's way back. So what's the point? I don't get it. And that's the other thing too, like all these people paying all these gobs of money for stuff that Steve McQueen owned. I don't get it. Now a couple of cool things, like Paul Newman's Rolex. Now that sold, what was that, $15-20 million? Paul Newman's Rolex Daytona. Now that's obscene money just for a watch. But you know what? That name tied to it, and with the engraving that was on it, okay, you got something there. But still, I wouldn't spend $20 million on a watch. That's just me. I think it was 20. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, I apologize. That's on me. Just kind of want to tell, but I know it's some kind of obscene amount of money. But anyways, let's get back to our topic, right? The F40. So anyways, so they get out there and, they're planning for these cars. Hey, this is just a road-going car. That's all it was, made for. They didn't have any plans to race this car. They had no intent of racing this car. Well, obviously, when you have a car that's got that much capability, horsepower, light, people are going to go race it. Hey, look at the McLaren F1. Same thing. Gordon Murray's like, hey, I don't plan on racing them. And then what happened? They go race it. And then first time out, they go out and they win them all. Basically with a stock car. So, anyways, people started clamoring, wanting a race car and getting to build it. So, ends up doing is they end up teaming up with the Bigliotti, and they end up building the F40 LM, with LM standing for Le Mans. So, they built this car up, and this thing, obviously, they stripped out more weight somehow, some way they did. But one of the big things is the motor. They took that thing apart and rebuilt it They stuck on much larger IHI turbochargers and basically put it up to, I think it was almost 38 psi on those things, where the road going standard stock ones were like 16 psi. So right there, tell you. So, and it got it up there over 700 plus horsepower. And there are really no definitive numbers on torque, but let's just say the torque was probably up there too. But anyways, they stepped it on, took that motor, reworked it, and they said if they really unleashed it, you could probably get close to 1,000 horsepower with that motor. But anyways, normally just because of sanctions and whatnot in the race series, they did it. Obviously, they get kind of restrained a bit. So they built 19 of the Ferrari F40 LMs. Now, again, these were lighter, bigger motor, whatnot, and these were just racing cars. But obviously it was derived from the street car. So just, aesthetically, if you're in the know, you can tell the difference between the two with the wings, the wheels, everything like that. But, just someone on the street, they'll just know it's an F40. I mean, you got that iconic rear wing. I mean, that car right then and there, many, many people just know, of F40 when they see it. They know that's a Ferrari, they know it's an F40. So, price-wise, let's talk about pricing on these cars. Now, my business is I deal in Ferraris, so I'm kind of dealing price-wise with these cars on a pretty regular basis. Now, it doesn't sound like that many, only 1,300 cars built. The LM side, that the 19 built, they get up there in price. Now, you see people jump around, but I'll tell you right now, currently at this time, day and age, in July of 2022, you're probably in the 1.8 to 2.5 million dollar range for an F40. Now, a lot of factors will play into that. If it's Class E certified, mileage plays a big role in that, ownership. Another big thing is original paint. If it's got original paint on that car, then you're talking some good money, because when they built those things, they put on barely any paint because, again, about weight. It all boils down to, hey, let's keep the weight off. So the ones where, you can see the exposed, basically carbon fiber Kevlar weave, those things are worth a lot more money just because of that fact. Obviously, cars throughout time, things happen to them, but if you can come across original paint one, plexiglass side window one too, you're going to pay top dollar. You're going to be in that 2.5 million plus range. And again, hey, I'm always telling someone when I'm working with them for what they're looking for, to pay for the best thing that you can afford. What's your intent with this car? People aren't going to be going on, country slogs in this thing, driving across country, or going for 10, 12-hour jaunts in these cars. These are, people use these as a weekend toy. They're going to go out for an hour or two, go to a Cars and Coffee, go to something along like that. Unfortunately, they don't get exercise the way they should. But the other side of it is a lot of these people that have these things don't have the capability to handle all that power and drive it. So God forbid they crash it, because that's just, there's some repair bills you don't want. So, the other fact too is, take into account when you buy this car, be aware of the fact of maintenance and what it takes to keep these cars road going. They have a lot of maintenance that needs to be done. They get timed out, so to speak. Like the fuel bladder, it's every 5 years that thing's got to be replaced. That's a very, very large undertaking just to do that. All your rubber bushings, everything in that car, especially if you're not driving all that much, getting the fluids going through it, and getting that thing exercised, the stuff just starts getting dry, it gets brittle. That's one of the things too, is when you have cars like that, you need to drive them. That's what it is. It's a car. These cars need to be driven. Now, I'm not saying you need to drive 50,000 miles a year or something like that, but take it out a couple times a month if you have that ability, depending on where you're at in the country, and go for a couple 100-mile drive, once or twice a month. Exercise that car. It really, really needs it. Now, when we start talking pricing to the LMs, now this is where it gets a little, I guess, interesting. Now you go out there and you look and see what people say what they're going for. Now, I'm not sure where they're coming up with these prices, because I'm seeing them very, very low, because a couple of the LMs that I was trying to source and find, for someone said we were in the about $5 to $6 million range. Now, I've seen a couple of things, people saying, oh, it's only about like 3 or 4. I don't think so. You only got 19 or something like that, and the people are going to start paying through the nose for it. And again, it's going to boil down to mileage, Class C certification, all that. Now, obviously, these were race cars, so you really couldn't put them on the street. But I know there's a couple out there that they basically got, I don't want to say federalized, but they got turned into so they could be a street going car. Now, again, making a street going car over in Europe as compared to the United States is a less undertaking than it would be over here. Over here, it would take a lot more to it, and basically, I want to say kill the soul of the car, but you'd be taking away a lot of things and adding stuff to it that really. And why would you want to drive that car in the street, anyways? I mean, it's just going to beat you up. I mean, you're going to be bouncing all over your kidneys, going to be hating you. So, anyways, it's something on it. But out there in the market, you're looking in that 5 to 6 million range. Now, I know some people say, "Oh God, no," I say, but look, I can tell you right now, I was working on some deals with those and trying hunt some down, and that's the prices that we're getting, that need to be done to get them paid for and bought. And obviously, some people balk at it, but some people get it. So it all depends on the buyer what they're willing to step up and pay for the car. So hey, there's only 19 of them ever built. So right there, you got that exclusivity to that car because compared to anyone else. So it all depends on how much of a big hitter you are, right? So anyways, the Ferrari F40. Again, I hate saying second favorite, most favorite Ferrari because I said it's right up there with my first favorite 2.8 GTO because I just think that F40 is great. I got to drive one for all of about maybe 3 minutes, just kind of putzing real slow with it. But even at that, just doing it was such an exhilarating experience. It was unbelievable. It's so cool. I mean, I would give anything to be able to just take that F40 and just tool around and just I want to say, not so much let loose because God forbid I'd crash it, but I'd be paranoid. So, but just to take it on would be fantastic. I know one of these days I get it. That's one of my goals. Is obviously I'd love to have an F40 in my garage and sit there and get up every morning and walk out there and just stare at it for hours on it. My wife would think I was nuts, but I would just grab a chair and sit there and stare at it and just take a cloth to it and just rub it down all day long, just saying, "This is my baby. This is my baby." I'd go live in some shack if I had to, but that's what it means if I could afford one. So anyways, hey, you never know where the road takes you, right? You never know where life's going to happen. So anyways, that's it. I wanted to talk about the F40, kind of get into it. Like I said, I didn't dive in too much detail-wise what this car is. I mean, I'm sure everyone that's listening to this podcast, pretty much knows what the F40 is, all the specs on it. So I'm not going to really dive into it. I just kind of want to get into more the nitty-gritty or certain aspects of it, just about, hey, what they're going for, what the basics of how the car came about. It's a great story and how quickly that thing came to the market. And, again, being the last ones that Enzo rubber stamped. So that's what I wanted to leave this at. Again, hey, I know I haven't been around for a couple months doing stuff, but all right, I'm getting back up on the horse to get these things out going again. So I'm debating on what the next one might be on. So maybe we'll just do the F50 next. Hey, let's just start going down the line, right? When that last manual supercar the Ferrari built, everything like that was automated. So let's talk about that one next. So let's get that up on the thing, and we'll have it hopefully here next week, maybe a little bit sooner. All right, guys, again, I really appreciate you listening. Spread the word, get other people to listen, and check out the YouTube channel. Also, if you want to, it's Garage 65. Kind of covered it, but I also have the Ferrari Marketplace channel that's dealing just with Ferrari. So I'm headed to the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix weekend this thing, and I know they got some big deal going on with the 75th anniversary for Ferrari, so that should be pretty exciting to see what cars are there. So anyways, again, everyone, I appreciate you listening. Stay tuned, and more coming. Hey, take care and have a good one. Talk to you soon.
This episode has been brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports as part of our Motoring Podcast Network. For more episodes like this, tune in each week for more exciting and educational content from organizations like the Exotic Car Marketplace, the Motoring Historian, Break Fix, and many others. If you'd like to support Grand Touring Motorsports and the Motoring Podcast Network, sign up for one of our many sponsorship tiers at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. Please note that the content, opinions, and materials presented and expressed in this episode are those of its creator, and this episode has been published with their consent. If you have any inquiries about this program, please contact the creators of this episode via email or social media as mentioned in the episode.